There's perhaps no better gift that you can give than to teach your children about money before they have to learn it on their own. So many mistakes are made that could be easily fixed before they ever went wrong or broke down. Join us on Consider This program today as two parents will discuss for you how we taught our kids about money. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Jamie Burton.
And we are happy to have you, Jamie, first time on the
Yes.
show. Not certainly the first time to be in any of our conversations, but the first time here on the show, and we are happy to have you along. Jamie and Chad are the proud parents of three youngsters, ages,
11, 2, and 5 months.
Still hard for me to believe she's 11,
I
but
know.
we'll leave that alone.
Yes.
All right, 11, 5.
2.
11, 2, yeah, I'm going to say that didn't work. 11, 2, and 5 months,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And we are talking, and this show today is about parenting and money. I'm going to make the argument throughout the show that we have an obligation to talk to our children and hopefully our parents so that they have an obligation to talk back to us. And I don't mean in a bad way, but to help us when things become a little bit awry. I don't believe we teach our kids the things that they should know about money. And in all fairness, I'm hoping and I'm going to argue that Jamie does a better job than Daddy did. This daddy. I pointed at me for you on the radio. You couldn't see that. The bottom line is I spent a lot of time building a company and not a lot of time teaching my kids about money. And they got to watch us build a company as the co-founder at the Financial Enhancement Group. But they didn't necessarily have that training where I sat down and helped them think things through. So this is not me telling you that I was perfect at doing it. This is telling you, after 33 years of being in the industry, here's what I think you ought to do. And Jamie's going to tell you because she's actually doing it right now with an 11-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 5-month-old. Yeah. All right, Jamie, tell me. Well, why don't you just go ahead and start? What do you start with your 11-year-old? When did you start, and what did you teach her?
Yeah, so when she was about 6 years old, we started, Chad and I started discussing that it should be time to give Jalen some chores and compensate her for it. But we didn't just want to give her money for the chores that she was doing. We wanted to be able to teach her that there's ways that she can save, to be a giver and give back, and then ways that she could also spend and enjoy the money that she was earning. So when we were talking about that, we kind of discussed what portion should we have her save, what portion should we have her to be in the giving, and what portion could she save or could she spend. And that was a big thing because we didn't want to just take her to the store and have her say, hey, I want this toy, and just get it for her and not be teaching her the delayed gratification. So we just giving it to her, it doesn't really teach her anything. So it was important for us to start teaching her young.
And the important part to get for this, folks, I will tell you that, that didn't happen for me, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember distinctly, I had a paper out, and it was in the blizzard of 78, which it was probably bad up in your neck of the woods too, Jamie, but it was really, really bad in Muncie where I lived at the time. And I made like $200 in tips that week. For delivering the paper during that famous blizzard. And nobody talked to me at all about saving or, we that time we didn't go to church, about the giving part or anything else. I think in order for you to be able to work with your children in that way, it's because you and Chad live your lives that way, mm-hmm. right? And so you have to kind of figure out that strategy. You can't just say do as I say, not as I do, and get it done.
Right.
So when you first introduced that to Jalen, how did she take it?
She got really excited about it. She loved the idea of working to get money. She had never had money before, so it was a really, really fun concept for her. So it went over really well. We had a list of chores, and each one had a dollar amount that she could earn for each chore. So it was kind of like a game for her.
So you put together a shopping list of things you didn't want to do with a value attached to. Genius, Jamie, genius.
Exactly.
And that's I have heard people do that. What happens if you have a kid that would rather watch the Flintstones and not do any of the work?
Well, then there's always chores that they have to do just because they live at home. It's not something that they're going to get paid for. They have to do it. It's part of being in the household. So they at least have to stick with those chores. But, if they don't want to earn any money, well, they're going to have probably a pretty boring life. Not be able to go and do the fun things they want to do because they don't have the money to go do it or buy any of the toys they want to have. So
So I very much appreciate the strategy of you can spend some. I will tell you one of the things Jamie and I will tell you, and anybody on our advisory team will tell you, is that people have a hard time actually using their money when they get to retirement. And it's just natural. You spend 40 years accumulating money, and all of a sudden, people are telling you have to take it in the form of required minimum distribution out of IRAs and 401ks. But it's just not natural to want to take it out. So I appreciate her learning that you can use some, right? There's nothing wrong with using some, right? We're not here to serve money, right? And then the second part, the giving, right, is very, very important. Getting that worked into the mindset early on, and then the last, the saving, right? But you missed a big one.
Okay.
The taxes.
Yes.
So if I were going to reconstruct your program, right, and I would rephrase that. The way that you talked about some chores you just have to do, that's how I would begin to explain the tax code.
Okay.
Right? That when there's some chores you have to do, and that's the tax. You don't have a choice. You're going to pay it, right? And the more you do, sadly, the more you have to pay, right? And teach people to understand how that system really works. Going from the very beginning in terms of what's on. So let's talk about one of when we talk about the 5 critical elements and your life after work, and we'll start there with retirement planning. At what age or how did you explain compound interest to her?
We haven't quite explained that to her yet. Right now, she has a savings account at the bank. We have discussed opening some kind of account where she can start investing that. We have right now a 529 for her that we can start explaining that to her a little bit better, and that'll help her understand the concept of compound interest. But that's very important for kids to understand, because if you save $1 today rather than $1 in 10 years, it's going to be a whole different story and a whole different ball game. So if you can start explaining that to kids and having them understand that, then that'll be a big game changer for them wanting to save.
I think that's going to have to be one of your assignments, because it's we build checklists at the Financial Enhancement Group. That's how we survive. And I think we ought to build a checklist that says these are the concepts that I would teach, that I wish I would have taught my kids, and these are the concepts that you are teaching yours, or will teach the younger ones as they get there, and the 5 to 7 key things that they need to be able to take away. The reason I think learning compound interest is so important, and if you're not familiar with that term, I'll just try to break it down for you. Einstein put it this way. He said on his deathbed, allegedly, I wasn't there, but he said that he didn't know what the 7 wonders of the world were, but the 8th wonder of the world was clearly compound interest, and it is the concept that when you put money in an investment account, or even in a bank, if you actually get interest at a bank. That when the not only do you have your initial deposit, but you also have the interest that it earned. And over a period of time, it's important for the kids to recognize that the interest is actually greater than what the initial deposit was. And I can't stress to you how important it is that you break that down for people, because what kids don't understand and young adults don't understand, and sadly, some older adults don't understand, is the inverse of compound interest is the annual percentage rate you pay on your credit cards and everything else. And so, I watch people come in that are reasonably intelligent, that don't understand. They're worried about an 8 or 9% return on an investment account, and saying it may not be enough, or it may be higher. They're coming from some other place, and we're having that conversation, but they've got credit card debt that's at 13% or 15% or at 18%, right? And that compound interest goes both ways. It goes toward the creditor if you're a debtor, and it goes toward you if you're an investor, right? And I think the better you can teach that, the better off we are. So what else, what would, when we look at those 5 to 7 points, we talked about saving, we talked about spending, we talked about giving, we talked about the taxes. What else would you teach?
Well, one of the huge things you just brought up was credit cards and credit card interest. A lot of people don't talk about money before kids get out of high school, and it can be such a dangerous trap because once kids get out, that's when the credit card companies start knocking on their doors. That's when they start looking into getting college loans, and nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about the interest that you're going to have on these student loans. Nobody talks about the interest that you're going to have on these credit cards. And it can get kids in such a bad trap where they have maxed out these credit cards and have this interest and they have no way of digging themselves out of that hole. So it's so important to explain that to the kids so they understand that they should not be taking out all these credit cards, and they have to be smart about the loans that they are taking and then come up with different strategies of maybe working while they're in college and starting to pay off those loans ahead of time before the interest starts accruing, different strategies like that.
So a combination, again, when you, and this is not me saying that you should never take debt to go to school. I will tell you I have a bias toward that, but that's not me saying that you can't go to college if you have to take debt, but you have to be smart about how you teach it, right? And how you use it. And there is a difference between debt and leverage. And that is probably what I would try to explain to you. I don't know, Jalen can take it at 11, but debt is when you borrow money to go to Disney. Leverage is when you borrow money to run a business or you borrow money to make an investment, in somewhere else. There is a difference between the two. Both have their pitfalls. You gotta, we watch our balance sheet and have to be very, very careful and cautious, in terms of that. But it is one of those issues. There's a difference between using leverage. You've heard me say on this show, and I have no issues with it. They can pay my house off the day I die when the interest rate's 2.5% and deductible.
Yep.
Because I itemize, so it's deductible.
Yep.
So I'm gonna stick with that program. Jamie, I appreciate what you're doing to try to teach your kids. We're gonna take this segment and we're gonna go into the next one now. We're gonna talk about you. Now that the kids have left the home. I am one of those people, one of the empty nesters. So I've got the experience in that in terms of what's going on. I would strongly encourage you to sit down, talk with your kids about this, get them to understand. It will be better for them, and eventually it'll be better for you. Don't forget to get signed up for your Next Steps meeting, yourlifeafterwork.com. Sign up in the corner. Look forward to meeting you.